Back in the early 30s, one Montreal neighborhood used to feature the Peterson family band and a 5-year-old trumpeter named Oscar. By the time he was 7, he'd switched to the piano. His father was from the Virgin Islands and saw to it that music was a big part of family life.
The interesting part about my dad is that he became a musician because of being a sailor. From what I understand, he was a bosun on a ship, and he bought himself some kind of little organ. I never did find out exactly what kind, and taught himself how to play organ. And when he decided to settle in Canada, he sailed to Canada. When he decided to settle in Canada and met my mom, he taught my mom how to play, and then he decided, as the children came along, that we should all have a workable knowledge of music. And I think it was wonderful. He worked a marvelous system, actually. He taught the older children, and then he expected them to pass on what they had learned step by step by step. Daisy did a lot of teaching in the house, and she helped me tremendously. Daisy is a great tutor. Daisy has great patience. She understands human weaknesses, and she can relate to someone having difficulties. Daisy's a great pianist.
I've never taught anyone with the ear that he's had. He had the range and the depth that I've never seen as yet in pupils.
My dad was a porter on the Canadian Pacific Railway. He'd leave for his run, and he would say, all right, and he'd give us each a task pianistically. You had to know this, you had to know that, and this one would have to know this. And when I come back from Vancouver, where it was, or St. John's, have it together. There were no ifs, ands, and buts. Have it together. It's that simple. He would come back, and then he would call each of us in turn into the room where the piano was, and he would say, okay, fine, may I have, for instance, the scale? You know, what did you have? I had the scale of G. And he'd go through the scales, he'd go through the arpeggios, all the things we were supposed to have learned. And of course, it got to the point when he found one of us, usually me, I guess, that was playing games and wasn't practicing. He'd sit there with a little strap. And if he knew for a fact, I think my mom used to cue him, you know, he'd come in off the railway, and my mother would say, you know, for whatever it's worth, he may have signed the book, but I don't think Oscar spent a half an hour at the piano while you were gone. But usually that was the routine. He would go through this workbook categorically from point one to the end and say, well, what have you done? What haven't you done? And if you did well, he said, fine, now here's what I want you to do next week. I think this was all designed to give us a sense of responsibility of having, as I said, having goals to reach, having certain debts we had to honor musically, and we had a time limitation to do them in. I think at 10, I'm playing the usual, I guess, things that kids play at 10, you know. That's the minute waltz, things like that. I went on to some of them I wouldn't even attempt to play. I used to play this. The opening, the box, toccata, and fugue. And in between that, I used to hear my older brother, Fred, who died at 16, but I used to hear him earlier fooling around with things like and I used to wonder what he's playing. You know, I'd say, what is that? And he'd play tunes like that, and tunes like... sort of thing. And I said, what is that? And finally I found out it was jazz, and he was fooling around with this, and it kind of intrigued me.
But so did the classics, as taught by his Hungarian teacher.
Paul the Marquis came into my life at a very important time. I was 14. I went to this man. He totally awed me with his beautiful sound on the instrument, his beautiful touch, and his command of the instrument. And I was so inspired by him, I can remember, unbeknownst to him, going early for my lesson because I found out that he would practice. Many times I'd go early and sit and listen to him play, and he'd just be sitting there playing and playing with this beautiful sound that he'd get out of the instrument.
I taught him technique, speedy fingers, because that's what you need in jazz, in modern jazz, and Tatum had the speediest fingers. I gave him Chopin studies like, or
after the lesson, as I said, he would say to me, "What are you doing now? And in your field, in the jazz field, what are you working on?" And I'd be teaching myself different tunes, whatever they may be. They would have been the Man I Love, for instance. I remember playing that for him, and he'd say, "Well, I don't hear the melody singing. You know, I don't hear." I'd play it probably like. And he'd say the melody is choppy, you know. You'd make it sing, and he taught me to play.
and then mostly, as I found that he was so good at the melodic ballad style, I gave him the idea of big chords like Debussy has them, you know. Big, rich, soft chords. And as you know, that ballad playing of his is remarkable when he plays those old timers like Laura or Tenderly. If you have the natural talent for your fingers and harmony, they can't go wrong if they want it.